Hi, grace and peace to all. My name is Sister Carrie Patrice Paul of the Enthusiast Seventh-day Adventist Church located in Trinidad and Tobago. I want to talk about something called stimulation. Now, you may be wondering what is stimulation? The word is stimulation. But stimuli, emphasis on the word lie, right? So stimulation is a coined word from our dear elder brother Nyron Medina. And what he says is, he explains this word as the interference or arousing of the passions of the flesh by a lie or by the errors of anti-faith. So what is happening in a brief sense, what I'm going to explain is that what happens in the mind of a person who is practicing stimulation is that they are operating based upon false knowledge or anti-faith. Because the faith of Jesus Christ is the true knowledge. It is true knowledge. It is the truths of God. When we don't have that knowledge in our mind, we have what we call the carnal mind, which is the unconverted mind. And what happens is the knowledge in your mind, your thoughts, right? They cause or they arouse sinful passions or emotions to flow in your body. But the knowledge in the mind of the carnal person is not true knowledge. It is vanities and imaginations and things that are against God. So stimulation is the practice of using anti-God principles to evoke strong sinful feelings or passions in the body. It is to gratify the flesh, right? It is to gratify the carnal mind, the mind that is at enmity with God. It is to lie to yourself and manipulate your passions. Now the biochemical reactions and stuff in your body, your emotions and feelings and these things, they were never created to flow in a way that exalts sin, right? They were created to be in subjection to your mind, and your mind was created to be in subjection to the will of God, to be in subjection to God. So you see, you have the person with the carnal mind who is lusting about the woman, that is sin, fornication, or even a person who is addicted to porn, a person who looks at pornography, a child who masturbates, a person who practices sodomy. All of these could be classed in what we call stimulation or as practicing stimulation. So I'm going to read out an essay that I wrote to further explain what is stimulation in relation to masturbation. So let's explain a bit more stimulation, right? So, and I'm going to do it in relation to masturbation because we have seen that there are books and other publications, even persons going to speak to children in schools that are promoting and encouraging gross sexual immorality. And I want to show you stimulation in relation to masturbation. So to masturbate is to sexually abuse one's self by using your own body parts to do that which God did not create the body part to do. Masturbation is the manipulation of one's hands to fondle one's reproductive organs or body parts to obtain an orgasm. When we zoom into the etymology, and this is important, let's zoom into the etymology of the word masturbate. And when we do so, we see that a euphemism of the said word masturbate is actually the word manipulate, right? And we know to manipulate in the physical sense, it pertains to unusual utilization of your hands to do that which is out of the ordinary usage, right? So it's not ordinary. You manipulate your hands to do something that is not necessarily its natural usage. And that is what happens in masturbation in the physical sense. So in spiritual terms, the hands were not intended or created by God to be used in such a manner. Your hands, no child's hands or even an adult's hands were created to do such a disgusting and perverted practice, right? So when you masturbate, you actually change the use of your body parts. right? But I want to get into the real psychological aspect of masturbation. And as we saw, the word manipulate is associated to masturbation. And I found that so interesting. But in the psychological sense, right? To manipulate is to lie or deceive. And in the case of masturbation or self-abuse, to manipulate or masturbate is literally to deceive your own self. Therefore, it is self-deception. Do you see that? We could actually tie in masturbation to self-deception or self-manipulation. So we see that masturbation is self-manipulation. It is self-deception. Because in order to use your hands in a perverted manner to fondle your genitals or your private parts, you must first practice mental deception or mental manipulation. And then you manipulate the body part. So you make a sinful choice, operating based upon a knowledge that is not reality. And that is where stimulation comes in. Because you are training your body parts, you are training yourself to do practices that are not on the basis of real, true, profitable knowledge. So you have to manipulate yourself. And you make that choice in your mind. And that gross, sinful, sexually depraved choice is you imagining a non-reality. Or the Bible will explain these things as imagining a vain thing, right? Vanity, nothingness, a vain thing, right? Something that is not real. You have to imagine that your hands give you a high and exalted feeling of quote-unquote pleasure. And this quote-unquote pleasure that you get from your hands, you are doing that as a way to mimic what you think you will get from an actual bodily encounter with somebody else. Listen, this is indeed deception, and it is a non-realistic, sinful imagination. I can't stress that enough. Additionally, since sexual relations were ordained by God to occur between one man and one woman within marriage, any sexual practice that occurs outside of that realm is sin. It is transgression of the law of God. They want us to train our children to transgress the law of God and deprave themselves and manipulate themselves and call that love. Whether done between male and female outside of marriage, or whether done to oneself, as is the case with masturbation, or whether done as the extremely vile act of sodomy, man and man, woman and woman, all are sinful and all corrupt those who practice and continue in such iniquity. It is not good for you. Self-manipulation, as we discuss masturbation, is indeed to lie to oneself in order to stimulate or arouse the passions of the body. So we see that self-manipulation, as we discuss masturbation, is indeed to deceive yourself and stimulate and arouse the passions of the flesh or sinful passions. Thus, it is a form of stimulation. Remember, we saw that stimulation is a human mechanism that occurs in the mind of a sinner, wherein they arouse or interfere with their emotions and passions by functioning or operating based upon lies, based upon non-realities. Things are not true. Things that promise to give pleasure, things that say, yes, I am pleasure, but in reality, they are things that enslave you. You become a slave. That is why you have people who they are literal slaves to masturbation. They would feel guilty every time they do it, and yet they go back like a dog that goes back to their vomit, because that person needs something that is the only thing that can really deal with such slavery, which is a new mind, which Christ gives. So let's just get back to the essay, right? And I will explain the transformation that is needed. So you lie to yourself using anti-God principles in order to experience what you deem as pleasure. But you do so by transgressing the law of God. And once you're transgressing the law of God, what you think is pleasure is no pleasure at all. That is a deception from the devil, right? And you practice things that are debasing and embarrassing. And those acts break down your mental faculties. In other words, it deadens your mind. And you want to train children to do these things. You want to corrupt their mind and even interfere with the psychological part of their brain. You want to interfere with the part of their brain that processes knowledge properly. A masturbator is a malfunctioning human agent who practices stimulation in an attempt to experience what he thinks is pleasure. Said person is in a dark and sinful trance, a place of sinful slavery, and he desperately needs the grace of God to purge his or her conscience from debasing dead works to a conscience of love and purity, where all sexual immoral practices are killed. That is what they need. They need justification. They need transformation. They need to be changed by God. And now I am sorry to have to share such horrible, gruesome, immoral images. But I needed to get a more vivid understanding of what is being promoted to our children. There is a satanic agenda to demoralize your children because children absorb things as a sponge. So if you train a child to masturbate, if you expose a child to sexual things, you are going to break down the psyche of that child. You are going to create a sexually depraved monster. You are going to create a generation of vipers who have absolutely no regard for the things of God. You're going to train young women to have no respect for their bodies. You are going to train them to be victims, and even the young boys. You're going to train them to be victims, and you're also going to train them to be perpetrators. This is no light matter. Don't train children to practice stimulation. Don't train children to have uncontrolled and ungoverned sexual passions. Train up your child in the way of the Lord. Train your child to follow Jesus Christ. This is a disaster that has come upon our shores. Do not take this lightly. And you parents who are not taking it as serious as you should, or parents who condone this, what is wrong with you? Don't you know that you will shoot yourself in the foot by encouraging your children to be exposed to these things like masturbation and having sex? You're teaching 10-year-olds these things? Don't you know what you will be doing? That very child that you cause to be sexually depraved, by what you allow them to partake of, will cause you yourself, the parent, a whole host of problems. This is to create monsters in society. This is to demoralize. Because as I said, a demoralized society, a society wherein the people cannot control or govern themselves, are easy to control. They are easy to conquer because they have no sense of morality. And morality is what protects from tyranny or tyranny. Morality protects from that. So my final statements. Things of a sexual nature should be left to be taught to children by their parents, as the parents are convinced by God how to approach the topic and when. It is not wise to leave these things to be taught by teachers and persons who have different ideologies. Ideologies that I am going to say quite frankly are against the one true God. it is quite different to teach a child about human biology, you know, the reproductive organ where babies come from, etc. It's one thing to teach a child that in human and social biology. I remember it being taught in like Form 4. And it's another thing to teach a child how to masturbate. It's another thing to teach a child about sexual orientation. It is an abomination to teach a child that there are more than two genders. That is an abomination. And I could say, I will not allow anybody to teach my child that nonsense. I will find myself in any school that seeks to demoralize my child in the name of sexual education. There are statistics that have shown that sexual education in schools have failed tremendously. It does not work. They may say they're trying to teach your child about abstinence, but they are not. They are teaching your child how to use contraceptive, how to touch themselves. They're asking 12-year-olds what they look for in a partner, a romantic partner that is. Do not allow your child to be demoralized by this satanic agenda. And these are my final words. The science of these things, the science of demoralization, can be explained more by us at the Enthusiast Seventh-day Adventist Church. We have publications, we have studies, we have tracts, we have booklets that further explain these things with more information, more research, and more evidences. So by God's grace, give yourself a chance as a parent, and also do right by your child and train up your child in the fear of the Lord.